Passing it on. It started with a small mistake and an unexpected kindness. Emma stood at the cafe counter, her hands trembling as she searched her wallet. She was short by a few coins. The line behind her grew restless, and her face flushed with embarrassment. Before she could apologize and step aside, the man behind her gently spoke, "It's okay. I've got it." She turned, surprised. He smiled, paid the difference, and waved off her thanks as if it were nothing. "Just pass it on someday," he said. Emma carried those words with her all day. That evening, on her bus ride home, she noticed an elderly woman struggling to stand as the bus lurched forward. Without hesitation, Emma stood up and offered her seat. The woman's tired eyes softened. "Thank you," she whispered, gripping Emma's hand for balance. The next morning, that same woman arrived early at her neighborhood park and helped a young father fix a broken stroller wheel. The father, relieved and grateful, later held the door open for a delivery worker juggling heavy boxes. The delivery worker, feeling seen, stopped on his route to help a lost child find her mother at a busy crossing. The mother, overwhelmed but thankful, went home and spoke more gently to her children that night, listening instead of rushing. None of them knew each other. None of them saw the full circle. But kindness doesn't need an audience. Days later, Emma returned to the cafe. This time, she noticed a student ahead of her counting coins with the same anxious look she once had. Emma smiled, stepped forward, and paid the extra amount. As she walked away, she repeated the words that had quietly changed her days. Just pass it on. Weeks passed, but the kindness Emma had received refused to fade into memory. It lingered in the quiet moments, when she waited at crossings, when she stood in lines, when she noticed faces usually overlooked. She realized something had changed. She was paying attention. One rainy afternoon, Emma spotted the same cafe man from before. He sat alone by the window, staring into his untouched cup of coffee. The confident ease he once carried seemed heavier now, worn thin by something invisible. She hesitated, then walked over and asked if she could sit. They talked, about nothing important at first. The weather, the bus routes. But slowly, he shared that he had recently lost his wife, and the cafe had been their place. Buying a stranger a coffee that day had been his way of surviving the silence. Emma listened. No fixing, no rushing, just presence. That evening, she volunteered at a community kitchen for the first time. She chopped vegetables beside strangers, shared smiles without names, and served warm meals to people whose stories never made headlines. One man, barely meeting her eyes, said, "No one's looked at me like I mattered in a long time." Emma went home with aching feet and a full heart. Across the city, kindness continued moving, quiet and unannounced. The young father whose stroller had once been repaired now made a habit of stopping for neighbors. One night, he noticed a light flickering in the apartment across from his. A single mother sat on the stairs, exhausted, her groceries scattered. He helped her carry them up, and in return, she baked extra bread whenever she could, leaving warm loaves by elderly doors. A delivery worker, once rushed and invisible, began slowing down. He memorized names. He asked how people were really doing. One of those conversations stopped a woman from making a choice she couldn't take back. None of them knew they were part of something larger. Emma finally understood. Kindness didn't travel in straight lines. It bent. It returned. It waited for the right moment to appear again. And sometimes, it simply stayed. As she drifted to sleep one night, Emma smiled at the thought that somewhere, maybe in a place she'd never see, someone was choosing gentleness because a stranger once chose it for them. Winter arrived softly, wrapping the city in gray mornings and early darkness. It was the kind of season that made people rush, heads down, hands buried in pockets, hearts guarded against the cold. Yet beneath the heaviness, something gentle was still moving. Emma noticed it everywhere now. At the community kitchen, familiar faces returned. A quiet teenager named Lucas began showing up every Wednesday, never speaking much, always choosing the far corner table. One night, Emma sat beside him while drying dishes. She didn't ask questions. She simply worked. Minutes later, he whispered that his home felt louder than silence and colder than the streets. Emma offered him an extra scarf and wrote down the number of a local support center. He nodded, eyes shining, not from tears, but from relief. Lucas passed that kindness on, too. Weeks later, he stood up for a classmate being mocked, offering friendship instead of laughter. That classmate went home and apologized to a younger sibling for years of harsh words. Elsewhere, the cafe man, whose name Emma finally learned was Daniel, started leaving small handwritten notes with every coffee he bought for strangers. "You matter. I'm glad you're here." One note reached a woman battling loneliness, tucked carefully into her coat pocket like armor for the day. She later became the voice that answered a late-night helpline call, staying on the line longer than required. The elderly woman from the bus began carrying extra gloves in her bag, offering them wordlessly to shivering hands. One pair reached a young artist who had almost given up on his work. Warm fingers created warm colors again, and months later, his painting hung in a library where children paused, smiling. Kindness didn't announce itself. It didn't need praise. One evening, Emma found herself in the same cafe again, standing behind a mother and child. The child dropped his toy, and before frustration could bloom, Emma picked it up and smiled. The mother exhaled, grateful for a moment of ease. Later that night, that same mother chose patience over anger during a difficult bedtime, breaking a cycle she'd inherited but didn't want to pass on. Emma realized something important then: passing kindness on didn't always look heroic. Sometimes it looked like staying, like listening, like choosing softness when hardness was easier. Months later, on a warm spring morning, Emma found a note on her doorstep. No name, just a simple sentence: "Because of you, I didn't give up." She held it close, tears forming, not because she knew who it was from, but because she didn't need to. Kindness had found its way home. And still, quietly, endlessly, it kept moving forward, carried by hands that might never meet, but hearts that somehow always did.